Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Christina Lengel. A controversial $14.9 billion overseas buyout of the iconic U.S. steel company based in Pittsburgh still doesn't have Donald Trump's support. On Tuesday, the president-elect reaffirmed his vow to block the deal with Japanese-based Nippon Steel, upholding the same promise given by the Biden administration earlier this year. Joining me today is the Center Square's Kristen Smith. Kristen, what's at stake if Nippon Steel is successful in its bid to buy U.S. Steel?
Nippon Steel says that if they're able to go through with their acquisition plan, that they'll essentially be able to save U.S. Steel's presence in Pittsburgh. There's been a steady decline in the steel industry since the 1970s. And so obviously, U.S. Steel is integral to the culture and the history and even the economy of Pittsburgh and the surrounding region. So the idea that the company is going to relocate south to Arkansas has really stirred up a lot of emotions. Of course, people's jobs are on the line, several thousand people actually. So Nippon Steel is really saying, let us come in. We will keep U.S. Steel in America. We will keep it in Pittsburgh. And essentially, we will keep it afloat. And not only that, but upgrade some of its facilities that desperately need upgrading that U.S. Steel just doesn't have the money for or is unable to proceed with just because of high permitting bar and concerns from the local government authorities about developing and upgrading these plants.
So what is Trump's take on the potential buyout, and how does it differ, if at all, from the current administration?
Trump and Biden are aligned on the fact that they want to stop this buyout from happening, and both of them are very strongly committed to the idea that U.S. Steel needs to be domestically owned and operated. Again, I think that comes from more of an ideological standpoint than anything. And the Biden administration has said that it's a national security issue, doesn't really want to outsource too much of our steel production and manufacturing to a foreign country. Trump's opposition is somewhat related to that, but it's different in the sense that a big part of his platform is bringing jobs back to America, boosting American companies and really bolstering their presence and bringing them back to life, as it were. So from his perspective, allowing Nippon Steel to buy U.S. Steel would really strike a blow to that core tenet of his economic policy platform. So he, although similarly aligned, has kind of a different motive than Biden does for blocking the deal.
So speaking of his economic platform, he's mentioned tariffs. How do they factor into the deal or not deal?
So he's very broadly said that he will increase tariffs on other trading partners in order to improve U.S. Steel's position in America. Now, the thing about that is that tariffs are not an immediate fix to the problem. I'm no economist, so I can't say for sure, but it's certainly not as immediate as a buyout would be as far as changing the financial situation of the company. However, it's very much aligned with where Trump has been economically speaking and business speaking. So it's not surprising that this is the angle that he would come at. But again, he's been very vague on exactly how his tariffs would impact U.S. Steel and help keep it here, other than to say that he will make it more expensive for our trading partners and therefore more profitable and desirable for American-made companies to sell their products in America.
How do U.S. Steel employees feel about this?
There's a noticeable split in how they feel. So there's a lot of workers that are represented by a union, a very large union that represents broadly 800,000 people across this country. But many of them are still workers. And their argument is to remain domestically owned and operated because they are concerned that even with Nippon's deal, that the company is kind of just saying whatever they need to say in order to make this acquisition go through, but that really they would consolidate their manufacturing process in Arkansas, which is where current leadership of U.S. Steel is saying that they'll go without this acquisition. The argument is it's cheaper there because there isn't organized labor, there is no union, and so those worker protections and wage guarantees are not a factor in Arkansas. At the same time, you have a group of workers who say, save our jobs. We don't want to, it's a matter of if they're going to either go to Arkansas or stay in Pittsburgh under new leadership. They would rather stay in Pittsburgh. And of note, there's already steel production in Arkansas and other southern states. But the concern there is that the company's choice to invest in facilities there rather than to grow those facilities here in Pittsburgh and have more jobs is that we're losing out on very high-paying, qualified, six-figure jobs that could have been here in a place where we are struggling to create jobs that keep people in this state and rather than, leaving and going somewhere else. And so from their perspective, they want to keep their jobs, and it feels like the lesser of two evils.
And how are state politicians weighing in?
Loudest of all is Kim Ward, who is the president pro tem. She's the highest ranking Republican in the chamber. And she represents the region where U.S. Steel has a lot of its workers and its facilities. And her father was a steel worker. He lost his job when the industry went into decline. She said the strain on the family was incredibly difficult and they never really recovered in that sense. And so for her, this is very personal on so many levels. And she has really pushed to support the Nippon deal because, like the other workers who are supportive of it, her main goal is to keep it in Pittsburgh. And so that's where she's coming from on this. There are others who do not want to support the deal because of the fear of the impact that it will have on unions and the union workforce. And in fact, that goes up to the Biden administration as well. Obviously, that's something that Trump is less concerned about. What is also interesting is that Kim Ward has been very critical of Governor Josh Shapiro because she says that he has not been on the record about whether or not he actually supports the acquisition or not. And she believes that his leadership on this issue would bring a lot of peace and assuredness to the workers to make them feel as though he really does have their backs and is advocating for the best solution possible. The Shapiro administration rejects this. They say that this is a low blow and that they've been working behind the scenes since the buyout was announced in December of 2023, and that they're speaking with officials at the U.S. Steel Company, at Nippon, at the unions, everybody involved. Apparently, they've had conversations with. We've had sources on the legislative side of things tell us that that's not true. In fact, that's a quote unquote slippery description of how Shapiro has been handling this situation. But he makes the point that ultimately it's not his call, that all he can do is make sure that whatever decision is made and goes through in the best way possible.
Kristen, thanks for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.